Happy Monday, everybody. There's this old song. I can't remember how it goes, but it goes like this. So push it real good. Something like that. Anybody know that song? I think it was Salt and Pepper, if I'm not mistaken. That was what came to my mind right before I got on here. Oh, you pushed it to the last minute this time, didn't you? Oh my gosh, Nora. Nora. You guys, I spent the weekend with Nora. Can you believe it? We had a blast. We had a great time. And I'll have to share that with you later because I have to stay focused on this study. Do you know how hard it is for this girl to stay focused? I'm telling you, it is very difficult, isn't it, Nora? It's difficult. But girl did some things this weekend, and I do have to talk about a couple little things before I get into the study because there's no way I could brush over everything that happened that quickly. Like Nora was with me. That's a whole nother stream in itself. Hopefully she'll be able to get on with me. We did practice. Louie's coming on with me at 3 o'clock. We're going to be talking silver today. And about the event and, our next goals and steps with making our community stronger, circulating our new dollar. What's old is new again, you guys. What's old is new again. Diana, so good to see you, honey. Good to see you, Benjamin. Okay, so the other things, I just want to thank you guys for supporting me and all of my endeavors and how all over the place I am, but your support is so wow. It's just I wanted to thank you guys for just even chatting with me. I remember when nobody would even talk to me in my streams, so it's really nice to get some you know interaction. It's my favorite. So I love you all, and I've met so many of you already because some of us actually get out and do things in the analog world here. We're not just stuck in the meta. Okay. We get out and we do things. And that's what I am encouraging. And that's what I was doing this weekend as we had a vendor show. And Mike Colum from the Renegade Nation came out. Louie came out. Nora came from the farthest. She came 8 hours from Washington. Mike Colum drove 6.5 hours. And Louis drove several hours because he picked his girlfriend up, and then they came, and I got to meet lovely Susan. I love you, Susan. You're so special and sweet. What a doll. We had a great time, and we didn't have a lot of foot traffic or anything like that, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but it was a very powerful time together. It was like the A team was there, and we had a little private showing almost. So we did have some public people come on and make sales. I would have liked to see more, but that wasn't really the only goal. And so there's more that's coming from it. It's when you know how things work, then those things that take time are actually really sweetly savored. And then the fruit comes, it's not always very instant, but I got a super huge download for me about my private membership association and what I'm doing with Hilltop Workshops. That was my first public event. Well, it wasn't public. Can't say it's public. It wasn't really public. It was my first event in a public place. Okay. And it was, I'm not doing that again there. That's for sure. We're never going to be going back to the red line, girl. You know that, because as great as they were, and I still owe the front lady a gift because I was did a silly thing and mentioned how I was going to leave her a gift. And I don't usually do that. I usually just leave a gift. But anyway, they were great. Staff was great. Everything was great except for just the location of it. The hotel's dead. They put us on the marquee, but they're just, even if we did get a lot more time and advertisement, I just don't think the location was the best. So next time it will be better. And that's for sure. That's what you do with things like that. You go, okay, what do we learn from this? We're going to do it better. But one thing I do know, there's a lot of good things that are going to come from that meeting still anyway. So later on, I hope to talk about that. What's that? My brain and my mouth, I am so hyper right now, you guys. It's like, and I'm already 5 minutes in, but I just want to make sure I cover a couple things. I'll be back at 3 o'clock. So I'll be back in 2 hours with Louie, but it's all about, silver and how we're going to be circulating it. But I just wanted to do a quick recap about the weekend. Also, yesterday I went to the church where our missionary who was freed a couple weeks ago, he was a captive for 6 years. A Humboldt County missionary was captive, and he made all the local headlines. His name is Jeff Woodke, Woodke. And you know what was so special is I decided to stay in town all day after church because it was starting at 4. And I got a quick call from a woman at church. Her name is Jamie. She's a sweetheart. She's very disabled, and she needs a ride to church and back. And, you know, I was telling the lady a couple weeks ago, I saw her, and she always picks her up and drops her off. And I was like, hey, if you ever need a hand with Jamie, you know, I'll help out. And she called me the next week. So, you know, I drove Jamie home that week. And then yesterday, Jamie called me and she was like, hey, Dee, you're not going to that worship thing, are you? And I was like, yes, I am, Jamie. And then I got to pick her up and go celebrate with this body of believers who had prayed for one of their own for 6 years. Let me tell you what, that place was on fire. So if you didn't get to see some of that, I did attempt some live streams. Girl is not good with the technology still, you guys. Thank you for putting up with me. I had a great time. I did. We had a great time. And, you know, Nora's going to put it in perspective for us too, because she helped me to really see things that I didn't see and appreciate what we did. And she was so valuable to me being there. It meant everything that she came like that from so far, and Mike and, you know, Louie, they traveled from so far to be there. And I just wanted it better for them. But you know what? They didn't seem disappointed. We all walked away. You know, it was bittersweet. Of course, we would have liked more people coming in, foot traffic and sales, but we were there doing what we do. We all were doing what we do. And we're all self-governing individuals. And we were standing there supporting each other. And it was awesome. It was awesome. But my interests are on the laws of this land, this Constitution study, natural medicine, things like that. So, you know, I don't really share those things when I get into this study. I say I'm going to edit this out. I haven't had time to edit it out. And I just wanted you guys to know that I was focused on that event so much. And I'm not always super prepared for the study. Today I am. I've got to look over this, and I've got my notes and stuff. We're going to get into it in just a second. There's one more thing I want to say about the self-governing thing is right now we're at a time where a lot of people have sought after other options for our communities building up and connecting, right? And we do need to help our kids and our seniors and our veterans and our mom and pops. This is war. Self-governing is the goal. It is the page of peace, the real, true peace and unity page, remedy for our liberty. We have to know our history. So, you know, I just wanted to give a little bit of, you know, who I am, because I got a lot of new subscribers lately. And I thought I was going to be super unpopular. I got a couple haters out there. I know. I see you. You don't bother me and you don't scare me at all. Welcome. But, you know, I'm not always very clear about what I'm doing and who I am. But I don't know. I think that's why these people keep coming back. Like, what's Dee going to do today? Well, we are going to have a class right now, 9 minutes in. And if I ever do get around to editing, I'll edit all that babble out for you, okay? But here we go. If you don't know where you can find the study, you go to standuphumboldt.news. And then you go to the Constitution tab, which is all the way on the right. Excuse me. And you just click on the Constitution. If you don't have this kit already, I highly recommend that you purchase it from the National Center for Constitutional Studies. You can get it from either one of these tabs. We'll take you to their link. They're awesome. I got my study in 4 days. I was blown away, and it was so much. Okay, we're on session 3 in our binder book, and we are on, here's the binder, and we are on session 3, taking forever. Who cares? We're learning, right? Who cares? Every day counts to me. I don't know about you, but I've lived like every day could be my last for so long. I don't even know how to live any other way. I really don't. Okay. Number 15 is what we are on. Describe the process the founders went through to establish 2-year terms for representatives. And it's in the book, The Making of America. And that tells us this at the top of the questions here. We did these other questions the other day, of course, and that's in this binder. So we're going to look at page 269 through 270. I've got my stuff highlighted, so I'm going to read it out of my book, but I'm going to put it up here for you guys, okay? 269. Okay. Describe the process the founders went through to establish 2-year terms for representatives. What do I got here? The process they went through. Well, what I got is the founders did not want to follow the pattern of the early parliaments in England. Their slogan originally was, "Where annual elections end, tyranny begins." However, experience soon demonstrated that delegates to a national Congress need training and experience to function effectively. So, because the Americans wanted their representatives to return home and face the voters at regular intervals. It's one of my favorite parts, when they return home. This is really interesting, okay? Listen up. The fact that the representatives were to be chosen by the people of the several states created a national Congress of the people instead of Congress representing the federated states, as was the case under the Articles of Constitution. This is the part I meant, Confederation, I'm sorry. This is the part I meant, pay attention to. The people thereby acquired a dual citizenship, being citizens of a national government and also citizens of their representative states, to which they likewise elected representatives. So it's interesting to me, just because, that's where a whole dual citizenship idea came in for some other people, maybe, huh? Here are the major questions which arose during the debates. What should be the duration of term of office for congressmen? The term of election must be so long that the representatives may understand the interest of the people, and yet so limited that his fidelity may be secured by a dependence upon their approval, basically. A term of 2 years appeared to meet those requirements. Let me see. Did we answer that? I mean, I was like, process. I really don't know. I mean, they just debated and they decided, I guess it's the dual citizenship. But I don't really feel like I answered that. I don't know if I got the right. There's not very many of them where I'm just like, I don't know if I really understand that I answered that. Describe the process the founders went through to establish 2-year terms for representatives. And I read this whole page twice, and I'm like, okay, process. They're debating. So let's see what Madison says. As it is essential, what he said was, the greater the power, the shorter the term of office. As it is essential to liberty that the government in general should have a common interest with the people, so it is particularly essential that the branch of it under consideration should have an immediate dependence on and an intimate sympathy with the people. Frequent elections are unquestionably the only policy by which this dependence and sympathy can be effectively secured. Bicentennial elections under federal system cannot possibly be dangerous to the requisite dependence of the House of Representatives on their constituents. It is received and well-founded maxim that where no other circumstance affect the case, the greater the power is, the shorter ought to be its duration, and conversely, the smaller the power, the more safely may its duration be protracted. So, I mean, I would say they were Maxim, they're going back to common law, they're going back to everything that they use for their foundation that they learned from history and governments and saw where things went awry, right? They debated this. They looked at history. And they say 270 as well. Takes 1 year to learn duties. Well, that gets into the next well, I guess the answers are probably part here too. The process. Again, they're debating. Okay. Madison, no man can be a competent legislator who does not add to an upright intention and a sound judgment a certain degree of knowledge of the subjects on which he is to legislate. A part of this knowledge may be acquired by means of information which lie within the compass of men in private as well as public stations. Another part can only be attained, or at least thoroughly attained, by actual experience in the station, which requires the use of it. The period of service ought, therefore, in all such cases, to bear some proportion to the extent of practical knowledge requisite to the due performance of the service. Blah, 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 blah. Could we add some more bigger words here just to cluster fudge it all up for us? My gosh, did you understand that? I didn't. Another part can only be attained, or at least thoroughly attained, by actual experience in the station. I get all that. The period of service ought, therefore, in all such cases, to bear some proportion to the extent of practical knowledge. So, boots on the ground experience, requisite to the due performance of the service. That's the part where I'm getting tripped up. Requisite to the due performance of the service. I'm sure I know what they mean. They're saying, you can come in, you can read how it's supposed to be done, but until you're actually, doing the work and you have the people coming at you crying about this or that and suffering for their hardships, and we're at a place now where these people don't even care. They do not. They are so far from this, huh? Wow. Intimate sympathy. Miles Slattery has zero sympathy for any mom or pop business in Humboldt County that I know of. He could care less about you. And he holds a fraudulent position as a city manager. That's not in your original chart, Eureka. He doesn't even have a proper oath or bond, and you let him destroy our city. It's got to stop. It's got to stop. 16. How old does a person have to become to be a U.S. representative? This was interesting. I thought this was really interesting. A lot was said that wasn't really said. You know what I mean? In order to be a member of the House of Representatives, a person must have reached 25 years of age by the time he is sworn into office. This provision gave Americans the right not to have any person sitting in the United States Congress unless that person was at least 25 years of age. This qualification as to age was chosen arbitrarily and accepted without any significant debate. I got that highlighted. Without any significant debate. I just thought that was really good. However, George Mason of Virginia did argue that 21 would be too young for the responsibilities of a congressman. The convention notes reflect the following. Would 21 be too young for Congress? Mason, he would, if interrogated, be obliged to declare that his political opinions at the age of 21 were too crude or erroneous to merit an influence on public measures. It had been said that Congress had proved a good school for our young men. It might be so for anything he knew, but if it were, he chose of men in private as well as public stations. Another part can only be attained. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. But if it were, he chose that they should bear the expense of their own education. I'm so sorry about that. That messed me up. Apparently, the Congress, which was made up of largely of younger men, felt that 25 was entirely adequate, and so they left the age requirement at this level. There's not a lot of rigorous debate there, because once you've passed 25 and you look back at your life, you're kind of like, I did some sins. I got some consequences, right? I think that's what they're saying. I think they're saying I was more. I mean, they don't even say why they think that's bad. In my mind, I'm like, oh, because we're impulsive. We don't care about consequences. We do what feels good in the moment. Some of y'all never outgrew that. 17. Why were citizenship and residency requirements established for U.S. representatives? 271 to 272. Why were citizenship and residency requirements established for U.S. representatives? Why? Well, let's see. This provision gave a member of the House of Representatives must have been a citizen of the United States for at least 7 years. This provision gave Americans the right not to have any person sitting in the Congress of the United States unless that person has been a citizen for at least 7 years. The Committee on Detail, which served at the Constitutional Convention, recommended that a representative should be a citizen for at least 3 years. However, as this provision was discussed, it was agreed that an immigrant should be exposed to American institutions and American values a little longer before being allowed to make decisions for the people in Congress. Wow, that sounds racist today, doesn't it? No, because you know who will fight harder for America right now than Americans is immigrants, American citizens, immigrants. Would have been nice if they somehow, if we somehow put this on every American citizen, but you'd have thought we'd just do it. However, as this provision was discussed, it was agreed that an immigrant should be exposed to American institutions and American values. Oh, wait, I already read that. They therefore changed this requirement to 7 years. George Mason pointed out the danger of allowing new immigrants to sit in Congress. Oh, he said it again. My gosh. New immigrants. Importance of 7 years citizenship requirement. Mason was for opening a wide door for immigrants, but did not choose to let foreigners and adventurers make laws. But did not choose to let foreigners and adventurers make laws for us and govern us. Got no problem with that. Citizenship for 3 years was not enough for ensuring that local knowledge which ought to be possessed by the representative. This was the principal ground of his objection to so short a term. It might also happen that a rich foreign nation, for example, Great Britain, might send over her tools who might bribe their way into the legislature for insidious purposes. What? No way. That could never happen here. We answered that question, didn't we? It says 72 too, so. And then there's some controversy at the end. Let's just continue on then. A person cannot be elected in the House of Representatives unless he is an inhabitant of that state which he will be representing. This provision gave Americans the right not to have any person sitting in Congress representing a state unless he is an inhabitant of that state. The founders did not want to follow the British parliamentary policy of allowing a person to represent a district without living there. For example, Winston Churchill resided at his country estate, but represented a district of London in which he had no residence. When Robert Kennedy of Massachusetts wanted to run for office in New York, he had to become an inhabitant of New York before he could qualify. Oh, Sherman. The text, okay, so sounds like we're getting into the controversy? No, not really. The text for this provision was first presented using the word resident instead of inhabitant. This resulted in the following action. Sherman moved to strike out the word resident and insert inhabitant as less liable to misconstruction. Madison seconded the motion. Both were vague, but the latter least so in common exception, and would not exclude persons absent occasionally for a considerable time on public or private business. Let's read on. In 1842, states divided into congressional districts. It is interesting in the beginning, the representatives from each state were elected at large. In other words, if a state had 11 representatives, a person would vote for 11 people on the ballot. No, I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to go back to this question. I don't even want to get into that. We answered the question. 18. Describe the controversy that occurred over choosing representatives on the basis of population and tell how it was finally settled. Here we go. We're going to read it anyway. Okay. So, in other words, say all 11 people. That meant that the most popular party got all the representatives, even though some areas may have been opposed to that party. In 1842, Congress required the state legislators to divide their states into congressional districts so that each region of the state would be more adequately and fairly represented, not majority rule, for a good damn reason. George Mason anticipated this need during the Constitutional Convention. Here are two of his statements. Every region and level of society should be represented. Mason argued strongly for an election of the larger branch by the people. It was to be the grand depository of the democratic principle of the government. It was, so to speak, to be our House of Commons. It ought to know and sympathize with every part of the community, and ought therefore to be taken not only from different parts of the whole republic, but also from different districts of the larger members of which had in several instances, particularly in Virginia, different interests and views arising from difference of produce, of habits, etc. We ought to attend to the rights of every class of the people. He had often wondered at the indifference of the superior classes of society to this dictate of humanity and policy, considering that, however affluent their circumstances or elevated their situations might be, the course of a few years not only might, but certainly would distribute their posterity throughout the lowest classes of society. Every selfish motive, therefore, every family attachment ought to recommend such a system of policy as would provide no less carefully for the rights and happiness of the lowest than of the highest order of citizens. Oh, we're still looking for the controversy. Let's finish this page, last page, what Mason said. A congressman should be in harmony with his constituents. Mason, the people will be represented. They ought, therefore, to choose the representatives. The requisites in actual representation are that the representatives should sympathize with their constituents, should think as they think, and feel as they feel. You hear that, Miles Slattery, Kimber Gowell? And that for these purposes should be even residents among them. Sorry. I got a little upset. 18. This controversy. What is this controversy? On choosing representatives. Well, we're going to read it. This provision gave each citizen the right to be represented in Congress in right to proportion to or at the same ratio as all other people of the country. This is the provision which almost wrecked the Constitutional Convention. The smaller states wanted each state to have a single vote no matter what the population of a state might be. The larger states felt this was unfair. Virginia argued that this gave a citizen from Georgia 16 times more representation than a citizen from Virginia. The smaller states argued back that if representation were based on population, a citizen of Virginia would have 16 times more representation than a citizen of Georgia. It was finally settled when the Constitution provided equal representation of all the states, whether large or small, in the Senate, but gave each state apportioned representation in the House according to population. Since this was the linchpin which saved the Constitution, the founders had to address numerous questions. Some of them were as follows. What did Roger Sherman of Connecticut propose as a compromise? The Connecticut Compromise offered by Roger Sherman. I would say, obviously, that was a controversy of the small state of Virginia not being represented fairly with a larger state such as Georgia. But I'm not sure because I actually didn't get this far. I think that is the controversy, right? Don't you? Okay, he would have to agree to 2 branches and a proportional representation in each one of them, provided each state had an equal voice in the other. This was necessary to secure the rights of the lesser states. Otherwise, 3 or 4 of the large states would rule the others as they please. Each state, like each individual, had its peculiar habits, usages, and manners, which constituted its happiness. Yikes. Can you say California? It would not therefore give to others a power over this happiness any more than an individual would do when he could avoid it. Why do the small states object so strenuously to proportional representation? Complaint of small states. Brearley. It had been much agitated in Congress at the time of forming the Confederation and was then rightly settled by allowing to each sovereign state an equal vote. Otherwise, the smaller states must have been destroyed instead of being saved. The substitution of a ratio, he admitted, carried fairness on the face of it, but on a deeper examination was unfair and unjust. Judging of the disparity of the states by the quota of Congress, Virginia would have 16 votes and Georgia but 1. A like proportion to the others will make the whole number 90. There will be 3 large states and 10 small ones. The large states, by which he meant Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and Virginia, will carry everything before them. It had been admitted and was known to him from facts within New Jersey that where large and small counties were united into a district for electing representatives for the district, the large counties always carried their point, and consequently the states would do so. Virginia, with her 16 votes, will be a solid column indeed, a formidable phalanx. 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 While Georgia, with her solitary vote, and the other little states will be obligated to throw themselves constantly into the scale of some large one in order to have any weight at all. Objection to representation based on contributions. Oh, let me turn the page for you. Patterson considered the proportion for a proportional representation as striking at the existence of the lesser states. He said there was no more reason that a great individual state contributing much should have more votes than a small one contributing little, than that a rich individual citizen should have more votes than an indignant one. If the rateable property of A was to that of B as 40-1, ought A, for the reasons, have 40 times as many votes as B. Such principle would never be admitted, and if it were admitted, would put B entirely at the mercy of A. A's A has more to be protected than B, so he ought to contribute more for the common protection. The same may be said of a large state, which has more to be protected than a small one. Give the large states an influence in proportion to their magnitude, and what will be the consequence? Their ambition will be proportionally increased, and the small states will have everything to fear. Small states must have some defense against large states. Johnson. The controversy must be endless, whilst gentlemen differ in the grounds of their arguments. Those on one side considering the states as districts of people composing one political society, those on the other considering them as so many political societies. The fact is that the states do exist as political societies, and a government is to be formed for them in their political capacity as well as for the individuals composing them. Does it not seem to follow that if the states as such are to exist, that they must be armed with some power of self-defense? What was Franklin's analogy of the broad table? Franklin, the diversity of opinions turns on 2 points. If a proportional representation takes place, the small states contend that their liberties will be in danger. If an equality of votes is to be put in place, the large states will say their money will be in danger. When a broad table is to be made and the edges of planks do not fit, the artist takes a little from both and makes a good joint. In like manner here, both sides must part from some of their demands in order that they may join in some accommodating proposition. What would have happened without the constitutional compromise? Strong. The convention had been much more divided in opinion. In order to avoid the consequences of it, an accommodation had been proposed. A committee had been appointed, And though some of the members of it were averse to an equality of votes, a report had been made in favor of it. It is agreed on all hands that Congress are nearly at an end. If no accommodation takes place, the Union itself must soon be dissolved. He thought the small states had made a considerable concession in the article of money bills, and that they might naturally expect some concessions on the other side. Oh, blah, blah. I barely even know what I just read. They selected a committee. That's always boring. I'm sorry. Oh, my gosh. In order to avoid the consequence of it, an accommodation been proposed. A committee was appointed. Though some of the members were averse to an equality of votes, a report had made in favor of it. Okay, so they voted yes. I'm sorry, you guys. In what way did Connecticut Compromise provide representation both individually and collectively? One legislative branch elected by people, one by states. Pierce was for an election by the people as to the first branch and by the states as to the second branch, by which means the citizens of the states would be represented both individually and collectively. Oh my gosh, that's it for that. That is tricky, you know. That's worth a reread because I actually didn't get to finish the last 2 pages. I was better prepared. I didn't say I was fully prepared. I was better prepared than last time, you know. But woo, that was a mouthful, right? Yikes. Thank you guys for joining me for this study. I appreciate every one of you here hanging out with me. I am really enjoying this book, though. I'm enjoying our time together, going through these questions. And I'll be back in like an hour and a half with Louie, and we can have an open chat if you guys want to talk. Thanks, Devil Dog. I was waiting for you. All right. See you guys later. Love y'all.